Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Hey, Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sam. Happy to be here.
Man, I'm pumped to have you on. I know you well, so it's always a pleasure to interview people I know, but I'm sure we'll learn something new today that I just haven't heard about your story yet. And so if you can kind of give our listeners an idea of where you started, where you are now, and how you got there.
Yeah. So my real estate career, I'll say, started at the tender age of 16, not as an investor by any means, but as a laborer on a small construction crew. When I was growing up, I was never the restaurant type of job or waiter or whatever. I was always kind of the outside guy. And I got linked up with this crew of construction guys, and it was a small company. They just kind of did a bunch of different stuff, kind of all over the place and kind of different jobs. And one of them was building houses. They built like a couple of houses, just like some custom homes here and there. And I just kind of really enjoyed the framing work. I really enjoyed watching a foundation come out of the ground, and then all of a sudden there was a house there 6 or 7 days later. So that continued into college, and that's kind of how I put myself through school. Fast forward probably a handful of years, and I bought a condo in Chicago in 2005. That was a terrible idea. I still own that thing 15 years later. It's been kind of a self-licking ice cream cone, but still like not huge. And then in DC, probably about 7 years ago or so, I renovated my house. And that kind of got everything started, from my framing experience, my accidental landlord experience, to renovating my house. Kind of got us started with, okay, let's start flipping some homes. And my partner and I, Ryan, did some homes on our street. That kind of gave us the seed capital. And then we decided to pivot into commercial real estate, and specifically self-storage. So that's kind of how I got started, and where we are now is specifically self-storage.
Right. And I remember when you guys made that, election, I think you said you'd spent quite a bit of time really studying different asset classes before you picked self-storage.
We did. So inside Spartan, I'm the crazy Army guy. So I'm an Army officer, a current reservist. And inside the Army specifically, we have something called the military decision-making process. And it's a structured decision-making framework to be able to make a good decision inside of a complex, unfamiliar environment. And for us, when we made the decision to pivot to commercial real estate, that was both an unfamiliar and complex operation. So the Spartan team knows across the board how to use MDMP. I've taken it and civilianized it, I'll say, to make it digestible, that we're not going to invade France with Spartan Investment Group, such that it's digestible by folks that don't have a military background, but still understand to use the tenets of MDMP. And one of those is looking at three courses of action that you can do. And you analyze those courses of action against evaluation criteria. So what we did is we came up with, hey, what are the three things that are most important to us on commercial asset? And we came up with what is called the 3 E's inside of Spartan: easy to manage, easy to maintain, and easy to evict, the 3 E's. So when we looked at a bunch of different asset classes, office, medical office, industrial, multifamily, self-storage, all this different stuff that we looked at, the one that fell to the bottom the most for us at that time was self-storage. So that's kind of how we came to that decision.
Gotcha. So you guys figured out early on, I think because you did some housing flips. Maybe you said you own a condo, maybe you own some other rental property. I don't know. But you figured out early on that you didn't want to stay in that smaller asset classes because none of those meet the criteria that you've just laid out.
No, they do not by a long shot. And I have one condo left that's just kind of lagging. I never got up to that many single family rentals. It's just not my bag of wax. And Ryan, my partner, still has one that's lingering that he hates. To anytime somebody says anything about it, he has an eye twitch. So he also is divesting all of his stuff. Ben, our chief financial officer, is divesting all of his single family. We kind of have a running joke inside of Spartan that if you're doing single family, you won't be probably 90 days after you join Spartan, just because you'll see the commercial asset side and been like, this is easier.
Right. And so that's a fascinating transition, and you guys have grown, very rapidly, but I'm really curious, first off, how did you and Ryan, pick yourselves as partners? I mean, you said you lived on the same street?
We did. We went through this in like this really complex kind of matchmaking thing in which Ryan, as my neighbor, pretended to check the mail when I was looking at a house for sale, one down from his, and then just happened to strike up a conversation. We ended up buying that house, and then just like over the years became good friends and then partners. So it is a completely not repeatable strategy for anybody else to use. So our story is not helpful for anybody on your podcast unless you happen to move next to your partner and it all works out great.
Right. No, okay. So we'll delete that from the list of action items. Move next to your partner and find out if you guys are a good fit. Yeah. That's that's fascinating. So you guys selected the asset class, but for a lot of people, that's not enough. The next step is what? I mean, what did you do from that point on? You said, okay, great, we're going to invest in self-storage. I mean, now what?
So we did nothing, and that's by design. So for 90 days, we did absolutely nothing but study. That's it. I'll tie it into the end of the podcast as to like one of the key things that you can do to like some of my best advice. And we did nothing. All we did was digest every bit of information that we could on self-storage. And by we, there was 4 people at that time inside our company. And we all looked at it from kind of a different perspective. Ryan looked at it from capital. I looked at it from the overall strategy and capital projects. Jackie looked at it from managing it and from a property management standpoint. And Lindsay looked at it from kind of feasibility and understanding like how to determine whether a project was a good idea.
Right.
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying after those 90 days, that's when we started pursuing various projects and went from there.
It sounds like you've really taken your experience in the military and used that to define your roles early. I mean, I think that's a mistake a lot of us make, is that all of us are wearing, every hat in the company. Like, how did you guys select those different roles? And how did you pick staying in each other's lanes?
So it really goes back to, Dan Goleman and his teachings on emotional intelligence. I'll be the first one to admit I hate people, period. Ryan loves people. So Ryan quickly became our investor relations and our chief investment officer because he really thrives on developing relationships. And he is much softer around the edges than I am. And I mean, Ryan builds relationships brilliantly where I do not. My strength is project management and kind of strategy and the kind of the ops side of the house at the corporate level. Jackie managed hotels. So, and worked for Hilton. So she really understood branding. She understood management. Lindsay worked for some folks in DC doing some intelligence analyst work there and really had that grasp of leveraging data to gain insight to whatever she was doing. So quite frankly, we pulled up a bus. We had certain seats on it. The 4 of us climbed on that bus, looked around and been like, I like that seat. And we sat down. And, one of the key things for me and Ryan was selecting a partner that is like diametrically opposite than you. I mean, Ryan and I both have the same goals, but the methodology in which we achieved to get there is very different. And it works incredibly well the way that we partnered.
Right. No, and I've seen that just from my interactions with you guys. You've done a great job of role definition. So that's one, kudos to you guys. If you ever get a blueprint for how to figure that out, certainly let us know. So you found your asset class, you defined your roles, and then you said, hey, let's go buy as much self-storage as we can. Or was there another step after that?
That was it. So it was just one of those things, like we had everybody's kind of their lanes. We did the 90-day education. We felt just dangerous enough to go out there and start kicking tires. And that's what we did. It took us a little while to do it. We found our first project, and it was a storage, but it was a ground up development, Black Diamond. We found that first project probably about 2 months after we pulled the ripcord and started to kind of march out and go out there and look for what we were doing. Our first actual existing storage was purchased in August of 2018. It took us about a year to negotiate with the seller. It was an off-market deal. That's Aspen Park. And it's turned out fantastic. It's a great little facility in Conifer, Colorado. It was our quote unquote test kitchen where we learned management software and all of that. And then, from August of 2018 till now, we've built up about another 90 million in storage. So
that's incredible growth. That's incredible growth and fast. So now you've developed even more systems along the way. It sounds like systems have been really just one of the things that you guys have hyper focused on. Can you talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that when you look at the genesis of Spartan, we did our first, we got our first residential house under contract in 2012. It was kind of a mess. It needed a quiet title. So it took us about a year to get that, and then another 6 to 9 months to sell that house. That really gave us the money to seed the business. So Spartan's genesis in kind of its current form started in probably February of 2014. So from February of 2014 till probably about, probably December of 2018, we moved incredibly slow. And we did that because instead of moving fast and buying stuff, we really looked at establishing systems and whatever that we needed, the processes and procedures that were in place. And we did that very early on, knowing that if we went slow and we took our time and we built the systems, when opportunities come, you gotta be worried about failure, but you gotta be worried about success too. That if you're not ready for success, it can crush you. And just because you can buy a bunch of stuff does not mean that you should. And that was for us, we really established our capital raising, our acquisitions pipe, our processes, our operating processes, our capital project processes, kind of really across the board. And now in the last, we've got about 12 people on in our corporate headquarters with 3 more job postings out. And that's going to take us a little ways because, an interesting stat is from like August of 2020 of this year till now, we've put out over $100 million of offers. So when you look at that, and we could handle all of that from a capital raising perspective and an ops perspective. And that's because we built the foundations. We went slow. We grew organically and we grew slow that we could build, and our hair wasn't on fire. Oh, mine never is, and neither is yours. So we don't have that problem.
I don't have any hair.
Yes, to say
right.
But so we were able to kind of take our time and build those systems that now that there's lots of opportunities coming and we're starting to get a reputation in the marketplace, we can handle it.
Right. And a lot of times I feel like as entrepreneurs, we kind of have to build the plane as we fly it. And it sounds like you guys did not do that. So I'm really curious, as you look to those processes and those systems, how did you know even what to put in them necessarily to say, okay, this is the flow of this when you've never done it?
Good question. So I think that really comes from the military mindset. One of the things that we did very, very early on, almost immediately, from the education side of the point, from the house, we read everything we needed to know in our respective lanes. And from that, we distilled that down into a strategic plan that laid out our goals and objectives over a 3-year period. That plan ended in 2020, at the end of 2019. So our next plan was 2020 to 2022. And because we went through that planning process, and there was a couple iterations as we grew and kind of as we adapted away from anything residential to purely commercial, there was some adaptation to that plan. And then we have another level of planning that takes those strategic level goals and objectives and distills them down into operational goals and objectives, which just basically takes those. We use OKRs, objectives and key results. We use that framework inside of Spartan. And then the op plan takes those OKRs and assigns resources, both human and financial resources, to those to actually achieve it on a day-to-day basis. And then we take it a step further and develop quarterly tactical plans for every single person inside of Spartan. And I learned that methodology through the government and through the military, kind of building all the way down to your frontline soldier, if you will, on the military side of the house, so that they know when they come in every single day, they know exactly what they need to work on. entrepreneurs very often are chasing squirrels, shiny objects, not so shiny objects, whatever. And really having a plan right out of the gate to box us into a strategy that we wanted to execute has kept us from chasing, unicorns, donkeys, squirrels, whatever animal is running in front of us.
Right. And is that something that comes natural to you? Was that training from the military? And last, I guess, is that something you enjoy doing?
So the answer to your question is yes, across the board.
Okay.
So I have a proclivity for planning. I'm a very good planner, even compared to my military peers. I am.
Gotcha.
Operational assignment where I've been in the operations of various levels of the military, and then also leading the operations as a platoon leader in Iraq, kind of taking those operational plans that were given from higher and executing them at the tactical level. So that was just something that I do very much enjoy planning. So I don't know that the team does nearly as much as I do. They probably just placate me, but it definitely 100% helps.
Right. And that's a weakness. I think that so many of us, like you said, chasing whatever animal runs in front of us. It's a weakness so many of us, have, because the last bloody, thing we want to do is sit down and spend a day planning. Like,
yep.
Man, I could go out and buy an asset and I can run crews and we can be building stuff and making money and, watching the checks, come in and go out. And how much more fun is that besides planning? We relegate planning to the very maybe we'll do that on January 2nd.
That's right. I'll give your listeners a quote, Eisenhower. In preparing for battle, I generally find that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. I think a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck because they're trying to come up with the perfect plan. So this comes from the military. So in garrison, like when we're back here in the US, the 80% solution on time is better than the 100% solution late. You push forward to combat and it's a 60% solution is executed before all of your buddies are dead is much better. I think a lot of entrepreneurs try to get to that 100%. It's got to be the perfect plan. Another military analogy, no plan survives first contact. So getting wrapped around the axle and spending hours and hours and hours trying to come up with the perfect plan doesn't work. Come up with a good plan, and that planning, that thought process that you went through, even if your plan doesn't work, doesn't matter. That thought process will get you through the day.
Scott, that's fantastic advice. Just want to say thank you for sharing that with us, man. That's something I think we can really put into direct action right away. Jumping into the final 4 questions here. If you had to distill everything you know down to one piece of advice for an aspiring investor, what would that one piece of advice be?
Going back to talking about doing nothing, be still. So that's in real estate and in investing, you can often make very emotional decisions. The best way, the SEALs have something called SEALs: stop, look, listen, and smell. Not a lot of smelling going on in real estate investing, but to stop, look, and listen before you make a decision is hugely important. So if you feel emotions, think, be still.
That's a great piece of advice. What's one thing you're doing right now to stay on top of your game?
So I use a full focus planner. That's the brand, and I'm not necessarily advocating for them. It's just the one that I've used. And man, that's been a game changer this year. It just really kind of organizes your priorities. If you're familiar with the book from Keller, The One Thing, or the Keller Williams guy, I can't remember his name, but it might be Keller. The One Thing is the name of the book. And taking that book plus the full focus planner, man, that's just really kind of helped focus me even more than our planning.
Wow, that's awesome. When it comes to giving back, what's one way that you are making the world a better place?
Yeah, so Spartan has partnered with the Special Forces Foundation, kind of coming out of Fort Carson. And there's a lot of transition Green Berets that kind of just need some help setting up kind of their ideology for real estate and investing in general, and just money in their mindset. So we've partnered with them to kind of provide the transitioning Green Berets that are coming out of the teams and transitioning to civilian life, just kind of help them kind of set a plan.
Man, that's awesome. Scott, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
Yeah. So if you got some questions, you can email me at scott@spartan-investors.com. If you're interested in investing, just shoot over to our website and do our intake form. And one of our investor relations teams will have a great chat with you to truly understand your investing needs.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, Scott, for your time. Certainly appreciate it. Look forward to doing it again sometime soon.
Outstanding, Sam. Thank you.